Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of College Blitz here on FTSN. I'm Russ Morgan here with my man Q, always on the other side of the College Blitz. Q, how we doing today?
What is good, bro? What is good, man? Hey, I'm great. But hey, before we start, what was that a figment of my imagination? Or did Bobby was that an intro that I just witnessed right there?
Was it? I don't know. I
What-
It was. Hey, there we go.
Hey, we were talking so much shit. He even restarted it. He's like, "I'm listening, and I'm gonna restart it just so Russ can see it." So,
yeah, I got some.
You're damn right.
He was like, y'all got jokes here. Let me restart it so Russ can
Bobby,
see
it wasn't. We had to look at you. We had to look at Fitz stands all the time. That was bugging.
Well, that was outstanding. I love how he's like, okay, he's like, I got something for you. Oh, you didn't see it? I got something for you. Here, I'll restart it.
I got some stuff queued up for the episode that gets me jacked on. But Bobby, thank you. I know we've been hounding you, but thank you for getting that done. It's sick.
That was outstanding. That was
I thought you were
Bobby.
gonna give me shit. I was like, hey Russ, you actually introduced us this time.
Yeah, that was Bobby. That was the man behind the boards right there. Our guy Bobby with the the restart of the intro.
We always appreciate Bobby, even though he's a Dolphins fan. I still appreciate him. I told him I hate all his teams, especially the Dolphins. But at the end of the day, we can talk some shit. He's still, be a good person. It's just sports, That's all that really matters. It's just something we love talking about. It's not like the end all be all.
We absolutely love it. We love to give each other some some little trash talk and just getting ready for the season, man. And speaking of getting ready for the season, hey, real quick, you smell that?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
Can you smell that? You know what that is? That is the first preseason game of the 20.
I'm checked out. We're less than a month away from actually college football.
We gotta start somewhere, and tonight is the Hall of Fame game. All right, 8 p.m. Okay, taking place. All right, at the home of the NFL Hall of Fame. Right. And listen, that's something to be excited for. I know Russ disagrees, but I know Bobby agrees. And I would imagine the majority of people agree that this is what gets the ball rolling, right? They're in Canton, Ohio.
I'm not going to say I'm going to watch the whole thing. I might watch a quarter.
Hey, listen, I would venture to guess the majority of people are going to watch more than that. Because
I'm not surprised. I'm not arguing with you at all. That's just me.
We've been without it for about 6 months, and it's long enough. All right, so.
I'm more jacked up. We got college football on the 23rd.
No, 100%. But that's 3 weeks from now. That's over 3 weeks from now. So we got, first things first. All right. We got NFL preseason football today, man. So I'm good with it.
I'm also jacked up who we're talking about today.
100%.
I'm doing good. Obviously, college football is right around the corner. Had a good episode last night on deck. Had a very exciting trade deadline for a lot of teams, minus the Marlins. Didn't really do much. A couple players here and there, but I'm jacked up because we're in our third part of the series. And when I hear this, and it makes me really sad when I hear this song because I'm not going to hear it anymore. I get jacked.
Yeah, man.
When I hear
good one.
The CBS SEC football come on, I'm jacked. I'm sitting. I'm not moving. I'm jacked up. And then also when I hear Vern Lundquist start speaking, I miss Vern like hell. Yeah. And I'm pissed off. I'm never going to have that ever again because Big Ten football in the SEC is not getting it done for me. As good as it. But,
Salute to Vern Lundquist, man. One of the greats for sure, man. Definitely, one of the voices of college football. I know in my, kind of late or early, I should say, teenage years, and probably even before that, obviously, a guy like Keith Jackson was somebody who resonated a lot with me.
Oh, yeah.
As a Canes fan, I know he called, the last University of Miami football championship, and a guy who just. Man, the voice and whoa Nelly, and the whole deal, man. Just one of the greats, man, along with Vern Lundquist,
granddaddy of them all, baby.
Yeah, exactly, man. So definitely guys that are going to be missed for sure, based on just the color and the description and everything. That you could close your eyes and listen to those guys call a game, and you could absolutely see it. I mean, you didn't have to watch the TV. You could just kind of see it play in your mind. The way those guys called the game was just art. So guys like John Madden. Who obviously wasn't, he was a play-by-play guy, right? Not the lead comment, he was a commentator, not the play-by-play guy, so on and so forth. So a lot of voices from my childhood growing up, man, that no longer around and
no longer do it.
Definitely miss those guys for sure.
When I hear Vern, when I hear Keith Jackson, you come into the Rose Bowl, you see the San Gabriel Mountains. And you hear the granddaddy of them all. I just go back to 2006 Texas USC Rose Bowl.
Yeah, classic.
And what makes this so great is because SC lost in such great fashion. Because I went to a high school, all SEC, all USC fans, insane, and I hated SC.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the greatest games ever. I mean, I 100% agree. The names that I grew up with are not around anymore, and these announcers aren't getting it done for me. They talk too much.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not being a Dodgers fan, I'm a Vince Scully guy.
Yeah. And another great.
And when the one thing I loved about Vince Scully, he wasn't afraid of silence. You don't have to be talking the whole game. Like, if we're watching it on TV, you don't have to keep on like talking the whole game. You could, hey, pick and choose here. I love Vince Scully, Vern, Keith Jackson. Rest in peace, Keith Jackson. Oh, yeah. I got to see the Happy Gilmore movie because I heard Vern's in that one too.
I saw a preview to it.
I've heard some mixed reviews.
Yeah, I'm torn. I'm torn because I love the first one, and I don't know how you could upgrade.
I don't know
how you could do better, especially this far, down the road. Obviously, I mean, the first one came out probably, 20 years ago or so, something like that, or longer, and so I don't know how they can make it better, but I may give it a watch one day when I'm bored or something like that. Definitely not at the top of the list by any stretch of the imagination.
Definitely not.
The first one sets such a high bar.
But like we mentioned before, we're in that third part of why they won't be title contenders. We're moving down to Tuscaloosa, University of Alabama.
There we go, man. Like my man is talking right here, man. This is part 3. All right. Title contenders, why they won't, moving on to Alabama Crimson Tide, man. And, recap a little bit of what that 24 season looked like for them, man. And the team, who under first year coach, Kalen DeBoer, right, taking over for the GOAT, right. And 9-4 record, finished 17th in the polls, 5-3 in the SEC, right. Losses to Georgia. And uncharacteristically, losing to Vandy, at Vandy, I think they had beat them like 35 straight years or something like that, and that streak came to an end.
There's no easy win in the SEC unless it's Vandy.
Yeah, right. And then lost to Tennessee, and then finished it up with a bowl loss, I should say, to the University of Michigan. So, listen, I think everybody expected a little bit of regression. I know I did, right? When you take over for the greatest, possibly the greatest football coach ever, right? You can debate that several different ways if you want to, right? Bill Belichick, Vince Lombardi, Bear Bryant, so on and so forth, right? But I think a lot of people, and especially in modern history, I think most people, including me, would call Nick Saban the greatest football coach in history, right? And so you naturally expect a regression when somebody like that leaves a program, right? I just think it's inevitable. The void that leaves, it doesn't matter who you fill that void with. There's nobody that's going to be able to fill those shoes, right? As the saying goes, You don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be that follows the guy that followed the guy, right? And so I think that's kind of the position that Kalen DeBoer finds himself in, a guy who's won at every stop that he's been at, right? But I think Alabama is just a different animal, right? This guy's been at some good programs, right? Washington being kind of the most high profile, but he was at Fresno State before that, so on and so forth. Programs that he's been at, right? He's come in, he's won a lot, and he's won early. But there again, I think 9-4 gets it done at a place like Washington, right? You win 9 games at Washington, and they're extending you for 2 more years, and they're giving you a $300,000 raise. Not so at Alabama, right? A lot of things will cut it at Alabama. 4 losses on the season will not cut it at Alabama, right? 3 losses in the SEC will not cut it at Alabama, right? Losing to Vandy, right? Getting smoked by OU, right? I mean, scoring 3 points, right? Those kind of things will be okay in you. They might get you through year 1 again, because I think, like I said, you expect regression. You cannot realistically have expected the Kalen DeBoer to come in and keep that train going the same way it was, right? They lost a lot of guys, when he came in. They brought in some guys, and obviously talent isn't really an issue in Alabama. But again, some turnover, new staff, that sort of thing, right? I don't think 9-3 in the regular season, right? And then they, a loss in the ReliaQuest Bowl, but 9-3 I don't think was a bad year. Where I think the issue is going to come in now, and I think the main area to really concentrate on is what this offense might look like now with Jalen Milroe gone, right? Who however you might feel or not about Jalen Milroe, right? You have to replace him. And not only are you doing that, but you're replacing your offensive coordinator too.
I agree with you. I'm a big supporter of Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, won at every level from the NAIA to going to, D2. I'm not 100% sure, because I know University of Sioux Falls, because I did go to college in North Dakota for 3.5 years, and they were NAIA at one point. I know he was there. They did move to D2, and now they're in the Northern Sun, which for football was very good, produced some good players, Adam Thielen being one of them from Minnesota State, Mankato. Yep. I got to see him make a sick toe tap catch, when he was playing my school. They kicked their ass. But, so I'm not sure if they were a D2 or an NAI at that time. But, I mean, and he goes to Indiana, does a serviceable job there, gets a job at Washington, makes Michael Penix, who Michael Penix is now, into a first – top 10. But like you said, I 100% agree. Living up to what Nick Saban is, I don't care. There's few arguments, and we're allowed to have arguments in football. What's up, JB? How we doing tonight? Thanks for tuning in. There's few arguments in football. Yes, we're allowed to have, but I know I'm right, and that's Tom Brady. I'm sorry, he's the greatest quarterback ever to live right now. That could change.
I don't disagree.
Could change, obviously, could be different, but I'm saying people say Montana. I'm like, there's an argument there, but I'm sorry, it's Brady. And Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach ever. I don't care what anybody says. It's Nick Saban.
Yeah, I listen.
And the greatest, football coach we've, at least top 2 greatest football coach we've ever seen. But like you said, and you don't want to be the guy after Nick Saban or after a superstar. You want to be the guy after. And Alabama's been so, it's not like he came in and he came in early Saban with Bama. He came in after, Nick Saban's won, 6 titles with Alabama. So you don't want to be that guy. Like you said, 9-4 is not going to get it done for Alabama. And losing to Oklahoma, that game was abysmal. I mean, what they had with John Mader, who got pulled, and then Mateer, and then you had Anthony Martinez, who can't even throw the ball. I think that's his name.
Yeah, listen, when you take a look at the season, I think obviously there were some highs, right? You look at, they beat Georgia, right? Huge win, and the eventual SEC champion team that made the college football playoff. But I think where Alabama really lacked, and I think it was really a product of that offense, right, was just consistency. When you looked at that offense, and when you looked at Jalen Milroe specifically, Jalen Milroe had ups and he had downs, right? I think you look at the ups and just a guy who was electric, right? I watched Russ 726 yards, rushed for 20 touchdowns, which is crazy. Leading rusher on his team, which again is a rarity for a team like Alabama when you consider the talent at the running back position. But a guy who throwing the ball had limitations, right? A guy who, even with the talent that he was surrounded by, a guy that again very much lacked, consistency. So, I think you're looking around and what this team lost from last year, right? How many players did Alabama have drafted? Do you know how many?
7.
7 players, right? Which is different for Alabama. Most years Alabama has double-digit players drafted, right? And you're looking at it, this past year, tied for 6th most. Which again for most schools, you're like, oh yeah, hey, listen, we have the 6th most players drafted. That's but for Alabama, that's different, right? 14th consecutive year having at least 7 players drafted, which is insane. Where the benefit there, comes in is you're looking at their starting 22, and there's very little in terms of portal guys, and there's very little in terms of underclassmen that are expected to produce on this team, right? And so you look at a roster that is clearly talented, right? A roster that top to bottom is blue chip, right? At every position group, they're blue chip, right? And so the lack of turnover, right, and the lack of having to bring in portal guys and everything really does, suit you well when you're going into the second year of a tenure like Kalen DeBoer is, right? And so definitely something they have, in their favor, right? And so again, some things they have to work through, and we'll talk more about it. But I think you have to like the fact that there's very little turnover on a team this talented.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, like you said, 9-4, 9-4 from Washington. I mean, that's a pretty solid year. 9-4 for Bama, not going to get it done. I'm rooting for Caleb DeBoer. I like him a lot. I like his story of a guy who's worked his way up to where he is, and obviously won at every level, but went from the lowest level, worked his way up to Division I football, and is at the peak of a Division I football in the SEC. But I mean, you lose. You don't have a lot of, like you mentioned, you didn't get a whole ton of impact transfer portal guys. You have quarterback was it Ty Simpson, who's
well, I mean, Ty Simpson is projected to be the
starter, who's been around a while, but we don't know what he's going to be. You have 2 young guys, so there's definitely a big question mark there. And like you said, I mean, you did lose some impact guys on offense and definitely on defense. On defense, you lose Jahad Campbell, you lose Malachi Moore. Offense, you lose Tyler Booker, you lose Jalen Milroe, who, I mean, I think my biggest question is for Alabama is more, will they contend for a title? It's will they contend to make the playoffs this year, which could happen, because I think the SEC this year, in my opinion, is more wide open than I've seen in a while.
Yeah, to me the overwhelming thought in my mind, and the way I wanted this pod to go, and like we talked about off air, is to me the defense doesn't worry me, right? I think when you look at the defense, you have the benefit of continuity, right? You bring back Kane Womack, right, who's still the defensive coordinator. And what you lost on defense, in my opinion, yes, you lose a guy like Jahad Campbell, in the first round and the whole deal. But these are positions that traditionally, especially under Nick Saban, right, Alabama just mass produces, right? They bring in, they bring in D linemen, right? They bring in linebackers. DBs are always a strength, right? So what you lose in a guy like Jahad Campbell, I think you're able to make up for with what you have on the roster. I think they were very intentional when you look at what it is they did in the portal, or maybe I should say what they didn't do in the portal, right? When you look at, again, they were not active in the portal. When you're looking at their starting 22, you're looking at like 3 maybe guys that are going to start that were brought in the portal, and they're not, they're not huge names. They're not huge positions, right? I mean, you have Isaiah Horton, a transfer from Miami, and I think their starting left guard, right, I think is a portal guy, right? Otherwise, and again, a projected starting left guard. But you look at the rest, like on defense, they're not projecting to start any portal guys. They barely brought in anybody, and again, not a lot of young guys really are projected in the 2 deep. So again, what you didn't lose in the draft, right, and what you didn't get drafted, right, just dictated that you didn't necessarily have to go out in the portal, spend a bunch of money to bring in a bunch of guys who either transferred out like when Saban left, or that entered the draft early or graduated, or the case may be. And so again, a roster that's super talented, right, it has the benefit of not having a lot of turnover, has a benefit of, again, especially on defense, a lot of continuity, right? And then just coming into the season with, not having to learn a new system from a new coordinator, right? Not having to turn over, look to a bunch of guys, a bunch of young guys or whatever it is, to really, learn and get ahead of the curve when you're talking about, preseason camp in order to get ready for the season. So again, we look at what this offense, lost, right? And when you're looking at, they turned over the OC. We'll start there, right? They lost their OC and they brought in, Ryan Grubb. And, if Ryan Grubb sounds familiar, obviously to a guy like you, who was a Kalen DeBoer fan, obviously, he replaces, Nick Sheridan. But Nick Grubb was with Kalen DeBoer at Washington, right? And a guy who came, if you remember correctly, right, he came to Alabama really quick, and then he went to Seattle. He went to Seattle with the Seahawks, was there for 1 year, and now comes back to Alabama to return as the OC for Kalen DeBoer.
I think so far the theme, in my opinion, has been of this 3-part series we've been doing is because every team we've done so far is having to replace their quarterback. It's a lot easier to replace defensive guys and still have a good defense, which Alabama's defense has a top 10 player at every single position. Mm-hmm. But I think we can both say, and the theme of this 3-part series that we've done, the series we've done with 3 parts is they all replacing the quarterback with a new quarterback. But I mean, it's a lot easier to replace defense guys, plug and play. There's a lot less to learn for the defense than a quarterback coming in, running that system. Yes, he's been in the system, for a full year, but still now whoever is the starter is going to have to come in, and he's going to be, right off the bat against Florida State week 1, which I know Florida State was down, but I mean, I know 2-10 Florida State. I think they're going to be a lot better than that.
That'll be better than 2 wins, right?
I mean, if I think if you get one, you get 2 wins, you eat the money and fire Mike Norvell.
Yeah, I mean, listen, different topic for a different pod, right? But I think when it's all said and done, I don't know that school is in a good enough position, right? They're not Texas A&M where they can give Jimbo Fisher $70 million to walk away. Florida State's not in that position, and I think Norvell had bought himself. Depending on how you look at it, right? I think, Norvell has been, is feast or famine, right? I think, Norvell's had, multiple losing seasons at Florida State mixed in with a couple good seasons. And so, I don't know if they're just, giving him the benefit of the doubt that, the good is going to prevail. But I think at the end, no matter what they thought about Norvell and whoever wanted to fire him, I don't think they were ever going to pony up the money that it took to make him, hit the road. So, we'll see what happens there, and if they're able to turn around. Again, obviously it's not going to be difficult to win more than 2 games over there, but obviously they're going to have to, game 1, they're going to open up against this defense, right? And so, not only are you going to open up against this defense, but more than likely, Florida State's defense is going to open up against what I would assume to be, the starter in a guy in Ty Simpson, right? A guy in Ty Simpson who was a very highly recruited guy at Alabama, and a guy who, the prevailing thought, I think, across the board is he's not ever going to live up to that 5-star hype, right? I think a guy who went head to head versus Jalen Milroe beat him out, right? And Ty Simpson has had chances to play and just hasn't looked good, right? And so I don't know that you come into this into this preseason and automatically crown him the starter without having him earn it, or at the very least the presumption, right? The outward look of a quarterback competition, right? I think you have to open it up to everybody, because again, I don't think he's been elite, or he's shown that he is just naturally okay. Hey, plug him in as a starter. But I think when you look at his time in the program, when you have that much time in the program at that position, I think you're naturally going to be looked at as a leader, right, in the locker room, right? A guy that players are familiar with, right? Keelan Russell is a guy who's super highly recruited, but he's a freshman, right? And it's super rare that you play true freshmen as starting quarterbacks in the SEC. It's really rare. Nico Iamaleava did it at Tennessee, right? Some guys have done it. Tim Tebow, wasn't a starter, but he played a lot as a freshman, so on and so forth, right? I mean, you have guys like that. Peyton Manning did it.
Bryce Young?
Bryce Young, I believe Bryce Young did it. But again, those aren't the norms, right? Obviously, Bryce Young was a 5-star kid, right? Bryce Young, a 5-star kid, and everything like that. And so, a kid who was really cerebral coming out, kid who obviously, despite what he's shown in the NFL at the college level, he was really good. And again, I think that the top quarterback coming out that year, if I'm not mistaken, played at Mater Dei?
Yeah,
I believe, right? Yeah. So obviously that type of program tends to breed a certain type of player that tends to play early and that kind of thing. I don't know that Keelan Russell's necessarily wired that way. I don't know that he'd be ready to go, really game one. You might see him in packages or whatever it is, something maybe to preserve that red shirt. But I think right now, if I looked at that quarterback race, even with a guy like Austin Mack having come in from Washington, a kid who's big, 6'6", I think he's like 235 or something like that, kid who's got some tools, and is familiar with Kalen DeBoer, is familiar with Ryan Grubb in terms of offense. I don't know that I would put any of those guys ahead of Ty Simpson at this point, who's a 4th-year junior.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think the talent of Kalen Russell to throw him out right off the bat. I don't think he's at the same level Bryce Young was coming in as a freshman, knowing where Bryce Young played. That is college football breeding ground, D1 breeding ground at Mater Dei. So, I mean, I think it's probably better to let Simpson go out, and it's his job to lose if he's not playing good, one of those two guys. But like we talked about last week with the new quarterback of Ohio State, it's pretty easy for a guy like Ty Simpson, who we presume to be the starter, that you have one of the best receivers in college football on one side of the field that you can throw it up to, and he'll make a play in Ryan Williams.
Yeah, listen, I think if you're any of the guys, vying for this, starting position, I think you really have to like, your chances of succeeding given what you have around you, right? We go back to what the roster is year in and year out at Alabama. This year is no different, right? When you're looking at the offensive line, elite, right? When you're looking at the wide receiver core, elite. When you're looking at the running back group, elite, right? You're surrounded by talent literally everywhere, right? Which is normally the case for the quarterback at Alabama, right? I think, one of the things that always, kind of tends to hold true when you're talking about Alabama quarterbacks, and in my opinion, one of the reasons why they don't necessarily succeed, in the NFL, is those guys are always surrounded by talent, right? I mean, we go back to, a guy like Tua, right? And I've had that conversation with Dolphins fans the whole deal. And one of the reasons why I never thought, aside from the limitations he has physically, is because Alabama quarterbacks, along with Tua and everybody else, are never not surrounded by elite talent.
It's system quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, listen, those guys have been coached, by again, great coaching, right? They recruit elite talent around them, right? You talk about what Tua was protected by, what he was throwing to, what he was handing off to. possibly the most talent that any single quarterback in college history has ever, had around him, right? What you're throwing to, what you're being protected by, and what you're handing off to. You could really make an argument that there's never been a quarterback that has had more around him than Tua. And again, it's not his fault, right? Great players want to play with great players, right? Great players want to be coached by, a guy like Nick Saban. But you don't ever have to put a team on your back, right? Tua didn't have to be elite, right? Those guys, he was throwing to wide open guys, left and right, right? And so it's kind of the same thing for Alabama quarterbacks kind of through the years, during Nick Saban's tenure there. So, again, you're looking at what this offense has at their, and what this quarterback will have at their disposal. And you, in my opinion, I think when you look at what a guy like Ryan Grubb has traditionally done well with, it's not a guy like Jalen Milroe, right? This offense looked totally, totally different last year. It's an offense that I definitely did not recognize, as a fan of college football forever, right? And having had Nick Saban there at Alabama for, during his time, that offense never looked that way. It never was led by a predominantly, like a dual threat guy, right? When you look at those names, A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, Mac Jones, so on and so forth, like those are guys who were, statues, really, right? Mac Jones was a statue. Greg McElroy and A.J. McCarron weren't mobile guys necessarily, right? So these are the guys who traditionally have led Alabama in the recent past and have found big time success, with that style of offense. So I would imagine that this is something that Kalen DeBoer, coming from where he's come from, guys like Jay Kaner that Ryan Grubb has coached and everything like that, Michael Penix, so on and so forth. Like, Michael Penix wasn't a super mobile guy. He wasn't a statue, but not a super mobile guy that won from the pocket.
He can move, but he does have two ACL. He wasn't a
statue. Yeah, he wasn't a statue, right? A guy who had some mobility, right? But remember, a guy who had, multiple ACLs, right? And so whatever, he had in terms of mobility was definitely zapped by those injuries, right? Michael Penix wasn't Michael Vick, right? So, those injuries slowed him down some. You saw some of that mobility, I think, at Indiana. You saw some of that mobility. I think you saw less of it at Washington. So more mobility than guys like A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, but definitely not in the same, the same class as a guy like Jalen Milroe.
I mean, going off of Milroe, I think that's even when Bryce Young was a mobile guy, Milroe was 100 times different than Bryce Young because he's a run first guy. He's got a cannon of an arm. I'll give him that. Yeah. But obviously, it was not a quarterback. Milroe was not a quarterback we've ever seen in the Nick Saban era, let alone the early with DeBoer. And this mold, I don't know much about Keelan Russell or Austin Mack yet as much, but Simpson seems more his mold, a pocket guy who's going to get it done from the pocket. I think they need to get that running game going because, as we've seen, when Alabama was dominant and Alabama was winning titles, they had a very strong running game with obviously all those names, with obviously Derrick Henry being the cream of the crop right now, especially because he's gone. But the names we've got. Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram. I know what Richardson did in the NFL, but in college football, he was unbelievable. Yep. So they got to get. I think that's for them to contend in the SEC, they need to get that running game going this year because that's when you see Alabama football having being very competitive, they have a strong running game.
Yeah, and listen, I think last year, to go back to what Jalen Milroe was as a quarterback of this team, right? He was the leading rusher, right? And so, I don't know, man. It's to me, you're really successful teams, right? You're really good offensive teams. To me, unless you're talking, Air Force or Navy or something like that, I don't know that the best offenses in the country have the quarterback as the leading rusher, right? And so, and definitely not Alabama, right? And again, I know year to year, right? It's the same program, but different teams. And I get what this team was last year, right? It wasn't Nick Saban, right? It wasn't your previous OCs, right? Sark, was there for for a while, and so on and so forth. They've had some really good OCs there, and have run really, kind of traditional offenses, right? They've run the ball, right? Play action, hit guys, and again, they've obviously had great receivers like Julio Jones and so on and so forth, right? So I mean, you've had great receivers, right? Waddle and again, the list goes on and on.
Waddle, Smith, Julio
exactly.
Jones,
Yeah, Devontae Smith, Julio Jones, so on and so forth.
Henry,
right? So you've had receivers there, right? Again, the skill position has never lacked there, but again, the offense, their best offenses and their most, I guess the most efficient offenses there have been run first, even with the talent on the outside, even with talent at the tight end position, which this year is no different. Yet and still, it's been a we're gonna use the offensive line, we're gonna run the ball, we're gonna play action, and we're gonna play defense, right? I think that system has been tried and true. You look at last year, I think Ohio State, obviously not necessarily kind of the same, but the majority of the teams that went were teams that, again, were similar, right? One on the line of scrimmage, ran the ball, play defense, right? I think Ohio State more explosive with guys like Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buku and all that stuff. And so, but what I think, to me, I can see a scenario where Jalen Milroe is again, and not to disrespect him, not to talk bad about him or anything, a guy who got drafted in the third round, by the Seahawks for a reason, probably a little bit of a reach, if you're asking me, but hey, they saw something they liked. They saw, a situation and packages, I guess they could use them in, along with Sam Darnold, which, hey, do your thing. But I think a guy who almost addition by subtraction, for lack of a better phrase, and a guy who I think, leaving will allow them to go to a little bit more traditional type offense. And I think an offense that again, all you need, man, is, again, and I go back to, again, Greg McElroy, AJ McCarron, Mac Jones, guys who were good quarterbacks, right? Guys that Nick Saban, tabbed as, hey, this is my starter, because the guys didn't make mistakes, right? The guys were accurate. The guys didn't turn the ball over. They got it to their playmakers, didn't lose the game for them. And I could see Ty Simpson kind of being in that same mold as those previous guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and bringing up if you look at the teams in that 12-team playoff, the teams who were successful with, obviously, Ohio State had a strong rushing game with Quinyon Junkins and Travion Henderson. Notre Dame, obviously, with Jeremiah Love. And then Riley Leonard. Penn State with Katron Allen, who has one of the best nicknames in college football, and he likes being called it, is Fat Boy.
Is he really? I had never heard that.
He was called Fat Boy by his grandmother.
That's awesome.
And he's like, I love it.
That's awesome.
So he's like, go ahead and call me. Yeah, but I mean, if you look at the teams that were there and dominating, with Penn State, with Katron Allen, with Ohio State, with Notre Dame, they had strong rushing games. And I think that's kind of the mold of college football we're going to see now, especially with the transfer portal. We'll see an older quarterback who maybe can come in and make less mistakes, have to make a couple bigger throws, but you have a strong rushing game. Alabama's defense is going to be stout this year. It's all going to come down to what can presumed starter Ty Simpson do. Will he, limit the mistakes, which could change. But as of now, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my money would be on Ty Simpson, right? Again, a guy who's, fourth year in the program, right? A fourth-year junior, a guy who's mostly disappointed to this point. If you listen, you go back to, to when Jalen Milroe, before he ever started, like those guys were battling it out to see who the starter was going to be, right? Jalen Milroe beat out Ty Simpson, right? And so, again, a guy who really has not seized the opportunity. Like, they didn't go to Jalen Milroe and be like, hey, you're the starter, Ty, you're the backup. Like, this was an open quarterback competition, and Ty Simpson got beat out, right? And so, he has not taken control of the quarterback position, given the opportunities that he's had, even when he has played, again, hasn't been great, right? And so you have to assume now, being fourth year in the program, going against a guy like Austin Mack, I'm not really taking Keelan Russell as a serious contender. Will we see him in packages? I'm sure the kid's super talented. I'm sure they'll use him from, every now and again, right? But to me, you have to assume this guy's going to be the starter, right? And so, you look at what it is you have around him. All you got to do is not make mistakes. That's it. That's all you got to do is not make mistakes, man. And if you don't make mistakes, given what you're surrounded by in terms of talent, given what you're being protected by, right? Who you can throw it to, who you can hand it off to, I think you have every opportunity, to be able to succeed, given the coaching that you're going to get from a guy like Kalen DeBoer and a guy like Ryan Grubb, right? When we look at what else you have to consider as a member of the SEC, look no further than the schedule, right? And when you look at the schedule, you're really not challenged truly till week 4, right? You start off against Florida State. I don't necessarily see that being a game that Alabama has any chance of losing. Again, game ones, you don't know how necessarily they're going to go, but I would not put any money on Florida State keeping that close, for the most part. So you start off against Florida State August 30th. Game 2, Louisiana Monroe, that's a win. They got Wisconsin coming to Tuscaloosa on September 13th. Wisconsin has not been good for the last couple of years. I don't foresee them being a formidable opponent for Alabama in week 3. But then you go to week 4 and a trip to Athens. And the early part of the season, again, after that week 0, week 1 slate, I think we have to look at very early on in the season, this being probably the best game of the early part of the season is Alabama visiting Georgia.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, we're going to see 2 young guys starting right. Not young, but with Castellanos, who's been there, but it's his first year in a new system right off the bat, and Simpson right off the bat in week 1. I know Castellanos is I know my man Q would love here have a full episode of just bashing Florida State football, but I know he's been chirping.
No, never.
What? No, definitely not. Q doesn't like. He has respect for every team, especially that team in Tallahassee, Florida. But I know he's been, and I'm hearing all of it because everybody on here is Hurricanes fans, so they're hearing. Looping me in with all the chirping Castellanos has been doing this year. So I think they're going to be ready to go.
Listen, it's a bold strategy. I'll give you that, especially coming from a guy who hasn't really been elite. He's had some good games. I've watched him play, right? He was at Boston College. I saw him nearly beat Florida State almost single-handedly, if we're being honest. And play some good games. I think he plays a style that I think can be hard, to prepare for, right? I think if you've only got a week to prepare for a guy like that, I think he can be difficult to play against. But I think a guy, when you get a beat on him, I think he's a guy who's I think people have learned to play against, right? He was a freshman, during that game against Florida State. But I think, there's enough tape of him now. And, when you look at his recent tenure at UCF, I think there's a reason why he transferred out, right? I think, he was benched by his current OC, which is Gus Malzahn in UCF, which has to be a really weird dynamic, this season. And so, again, when you look at what it is he brings to the table, again, a guy's like 5'9" on a good day. I don't know that he's going to be successful at a school at Florida State, but we'll see, right? But again, you look at the first 4 games for Alabama, first 3 I'm counting as wins. That Alabama-Georgia game, I think, is a toss-up. You move on to Vanderbilt, which will be a revenge game. Could be a good game, even though I would imagine Alabama is going to be tuned up and ready to go for that game on October 4th versus Vanderbilt. Then you go to October 11th. They're at Missouri, which again, Missouri, tough team, and then you have a stretch as if Vanderbilt followed by Missouri wasn't enough. Then you have a stretch of home against Alabama. At South Carolina.
Alabama plays Alabama this year?
What? I'm sorry. They're home versus Tennessee. They're at South Carolina, home versus LSU, and then home versus Oklahoma.
That's a game I really want to see, South Carolina this year.
Listen, that stretch right there, when you're looking at Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma is going to be better. I think they've reloaded, right? They brought in new quarterback, new OC, big time additions in the transfer portal. I think there's no way that team is not going to be better. So, there again, right, when you're looking at what it is that can hold this team back from being a contender, I think the offense is clearly where you start, right, based on the turnover at the quarterback position, new OC. But then just like every SEC team, you have to look at what they have in terms of the schedule. And, they're right there in terms of having a tough schedule. And there's no, I'd say none. You got Eastern Illinois and, you got Louisiana Monroe, right, sandwiched, at the end and the beginning of the schedule. Very, very few cakewalks, very few cupcakes for a team like Alabama in their schedule.
I mean, I know you're an ACC guy, but I know you're a football guy, and I have a lot of friends who are Notre Dame guys, and they always hate the SEC biased. I'm like, do you? I mean, I get it. I watch Notre Dame too, but do you watch what these teams and I know the Southern bias. Everybody in the SEC. I'm like, we play so many hard teams. It's just the SEC. You see that schedule. That's what you're playing year in and year out. Even Vanderbilt is not a cupcake game anymore. There's no SEC team. I guess Mississippi State, hasn't been the same for a while. Rest in peace, Mike Leach.
Sir.
Oh man, I miss his rants. I just,
one of the best interviews in sports history, without a doubt.
I did the couple of ones. I love the candy corn one.
Yeah.
And
as a fan of one of the most hated candies on the planet, I like candy corn, so that one kind of resonated with me right there.
And I love the one where I think it was the journalist was talking about getting married, and he's like, "Don't do that." And he's like, "So what you do is you stay at the office real long." She's like, "Honey, what do you think?" And then she says, "You're wrong there. So you just say yes." So you work long hours. I mean, like the guy, I miss him like just because of what he said, because he was so out of his mind. But I miss it. I mean, a college football great, but every interview was unbelievable with him. But I mean, I guess Mississippi State would kind of be now the cupcake of the SEC. But I mean, there's no true really easy game, even like we've seen with Georgia going to Kentucky, playing Kentucky every year. Kentucky plays Georgia tough all the time, every year.
Yep, every
so
time.
I mean, you're playing 9 tough games in the SEC every year.
Yep. Yeah, listen, I think when it's all said and done, man, you're looking at what the Power 5 turned into the Power 4. When you look at the Power 4, there's clearly a Power 2, right? There's a very top tier that is the SEC and the Big Ten. Right. And then, I would say the SEC, the ACC, and then the Big 12. I think when you're looking at where the power is, in those two programs, look no further than the money, right? The TV deals and the money coming in, which allows you to go out and get good coaches, right? That money allows you to bring in good players and so on and so forth. So, both conferences are loaded with great coaches, right? And you look at, a team like Illinois in the Big Ten, who hasn't been really good for a long time, right? Brett Bielema comes in, not immediately, but in short order, turns them into, a pretty good team and a team who's being forecasted to be a problem. Right. And so, a guy, Kurt Signetti shows up at Indiana. It was a basketball school, right? Same thing as Illinois. Shows up there from James Madison, immediately turns that team, into a contender in the whole deal. And so, again, man, you've got the money to be able to attract good coaches, and that's what you get from good coaches, man. You get good, good coaches follow good coaches, right? And these guys have built good staffs. They've been able to go out there and recruit based on what they have, in terms of money at their disposal. And so there's very few cupcakes when you're looking at the SEC and the Big Ten. But again, man, yeah, the SEC. Listen, man, I was listening to something today where people were talking about, the Big Ten is and they made their argument on why the Big Ten was better. And, again, I was like, I wouldn't push back on it a whole bunch. I don't think one way or the other you're wrong, right? It's 6 in one, half dozen in the other. I think you can make the argument for both conferences being the best conference in college football, the Big Ten having won the last 2 national titles, for example. Yeah. And so, but again, man, you go back to what's in the SEC. You're looking at the talent that's in there, the coaching that's in there, and every week for the most part, man, you're going to have your hands full. And so I think we're getting more and more, to the point where I think you're going to start seeing some of these teams, making into the playoff for like 3 losses, right? I think strength of schedule is going to become more and more, a part of the equation to get into the playoff. And here moving forward, I think we may see, a day where, you're getting, 3-4 teams, with 3 good losses under their belt that'll make the playoff. They're not going to be dinged for, losing to other really good teams, right? And so, I think a lot of people are kind of clamoring for that, wanting to see those big teams play big teams and not have there be consequences, for losing those games.
I mean, yeah, we're all clamoring for LSU, Clemson right off the bat, or Miami, Notre Dame. That's what we want to see. Yep. Not always playing these cupcakes. Go right off the bat and play a tough team. I know it's a little different in Miami. They're playing a home game right off the bat, and a lot of these early games you would see a neutral site game. But still, we want to see you go up and beat the best, and I think that could be in my opinion, Miami, if they go out and beat Notre Dame right off week 1, that gives them another reason if they are on the bubble and do their thing in the ACC. Maybe they don't win the ACC, but the ACC is, like you said, it's not the Big Ten, it's not the SEC.
No.
That's a big win marker on your schedule. Just like LSU or Clemson or Notre Dame, whoever ends up, that's a marker on your schedule. So that's what we like. I'm pumped. I mean, that's what we want. Like good football right off the bat.
No, 100%. Yeah. Again, off topic a little bit, but going to Miami and what they have, at their disposal in terms of the Notre Dame game, right? It's a win-win, right? Because it's a game. It's a huge game to start off with, right? You're on Sunday Night Football by yourself. 1, 2. It's a game that doesn't ruin your season if it's a loss, right? It's a non-conference game, to this point. Who knows if Notre Dame ever joins the ACC full time? But as of now, it's a non-conference loss. You still have everything in front of you, right? But if you win that game, that immediately catapults you into the national picture, right? And so, it's a chance they have in front of them. It's a chance they have to take advantage of. And again, just one of the many games that opening weekend that I'm looking forward to for sure. It's going to be a great start to the weekend, right? I think week 0 is August 23rd. There'll be, a couple of decent games. We talked about Iowa State, Kansas State being one of them. There'll be a couple more decent games, but really the season in all actuality, week 1, and the amount of games there's going to be that week, man. When you talk about Texas, Ohio State, and Clemson and LSU, and again, man, just a massive amounts of great games, man. I cannot wait. I'm literally counting down the days, and I'm sure the majority of football fans are also.
Are you taking plus 425 Alabama to win the SEC this year?
Man.
I mean, hey, I'm on Hard Rock. You put 100 down, they win the SEC.
Yeah, 425.
That's you 425.
Listen, man, look, and we just talked about it, right? I mean, when you look at what it is that they have to replace, right? They're great on defense, and they're going to continue to be, right? And on offense, all you got to be at the quarterback position is a game manager. All you got to be is functional, to be honest with you, right? And so when you look at, again, second year of Kalen DeBoer, right, a guy like Ryan Grubb coming in, and again, unproven talent, right, inexperience at quarterback, but talent, at the position. And I think if you could coach that up and get the guy to just be serviceable, man, again, go back to A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, Mac Jones. Listen, being serviceable got Mac Jones drafted in the first round, right? I think you just use your play, get the ball to your playmakers, don't throw interceptions. Hand the ball off, right? Like, if you do that.
If we're speaking of first round, Mac Jones had first round talent just like Tua. I mean,
100%.
Maybe Tua, it could be different with Tua if he didn't have all the injuries.
100%.
I think but I also think Tua's living off of a great half of football seen on the national stage.
Yeah, I say Tua, right, because he was more heralded, I think, during the draft process than Mac Jones was. I think a lot of people were super skeptical about Mac Jones. I think there was skepticism about Tua, but I think you got to remember before his last year at Alabama, right? There was like this tank for Tua, thing that was going around. Like there were people that really thought that Tua
every year's tank for Tua. Then It's tank for Noah. We're going to tank for Lawrence, and now we're going to tank for
Art.
Art.
It was tank for Trevor. But again, the tank for Tua thing was real, right? There was a lot of people who were like, "Oh my God, Tua," and I never saw it.
I got Cowboy friends, and they're talking about he's going into his sophomore year, and like, we'll just tank and get Tua in 2 years. I'm like, you want to lose for 2 years? I mean, like,
I never understood that. I never ever understood the love affair with Tua.
Going off a little, I'm in on the East 10th Street boys the other day. I'm just talking some shit with AJ and Bobby. I always do it because it's fun. And Bobby goes, "I pray for you, Russ. I pray that you come to the right team." Being a Miami Dolphins fan, I'm like, first off, Bobby, I'm questioning your fandom a little bit. You would want me to just flip to the Dolphins? I don't know. I don't do that. I loyalty. I don't think you want just some fair weather. I'll be a Dolphins fan now. Yeah, come on, Bobby, you're killing me. I know he's in the chat. I know he's in the background.
Breaking news: College Blitz has been canceled.
Yeah, college, everything. I get the on deck's been canceled every week. Bobby's like, God, it's done. Bobby, I appreciate the prayers, buddy. I think we all could use them, but I'm a loyal guy, dude. I stick with my team. You can stick with yours. I don't think you don't want a fan like that, Bobby. Sounds like a Miami fan to me, though. Sounds like a Heat fan.
Comments from the control room right there from Bobby. So
Bobby, we love you. Bub, thank you for giving us this opportunity. We have different opinions. Me and Bobby do, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's still my boy. So
we definitely love us some Bobby. Appreciate the intro, buddy. We definitely appreciate it, and appreciate everybody for tuning in, man. This was part 3 of a 5-part series. We'll have the next one coming up next week, and kind of leading us into week 0 here on August 23rd. We'll see what other stuff we can all hop on. On the FTSN Extra. Different channels on FTSN Extra. Some great content coming from everybody on the channels, man. So everybody, do us a huge favor, man. Like and subscribe to the show. We really, really appreciate it. Tune into Finch Talk and check out my boy Will with 305 Sports Now. He's a guy that joins us a lot, and we get on his stuff a pretty good bit. Like I said, like and subscribe to the channels, man. There's always a lot of good stuff coming out. A lot of stuff that's not football related. Tune into my boy Russ on Deck. Who's got his podcast. Loving the trade deadline activity. Check out mine, the I Hate Football podcast on YouTube, on X. Check us all out, man. We'll see you guys next week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Everybody, take care.